The Galactic Council buzzed with activity as delegates from 1,000 worlds gathered for an emergency meeting. For over 10,000 years, these advanced beings had worked together, sharing knowledge and solving problems across 3 spiral arms of the Milky Way. But today was different. Even the oldest members couldn't hide their fear. "The readings are clear," said Ambassador Lee, his smooth blue skin reflecting the holographic displays that filled the chamber. "The anomaly has consumed the Rigel system. Nothing remains." Murmurs spread through the vast hall as representatives from species that had mastered space travel millennia ago now faced something they couldn't understand. The anomaly had appeared 6 months earlier at the edge of charted space, a swirling mass of darkness that seemed to devour everything it touched, planets, stars, even light itself. "Our best warships approached within scanning range," reported General Song, a veteran of conflicts across a dozen star systems. Her exoskeleton clicked nervously as she continued. "None returned. The few transmissions we received before losing contact showed the crews frozen in terror, unable to function. Their advanced systems went haywire before shutting down completely. The Council had sent their bravest. They had deployed their most sophisticated technology. Nothing worked. The anomaly seemed to feed on their fear and their advanced systems, growing stronger with each failed attempt to study or stop it. At current speed, it will reach the Proxima Centauri system in 3 standard months," said Director Park, the Council's chief scientist. His elongated fingers traced the projected path across the star chart. And from there, no one needed him to finish. From Proxima Centauri, the path led directly to Earth. "We've been observing them for nearly 2 centuries, Ambassador Lee said quietly. "They're primitive by our standards. They've barely reached their own moon. Their technology is rudimentary." "Exactly," exclaimed Councillor Kang, rising from her floating platform. Unlike most species present, her people had evolved in gas giants, their balloon-like bodies designed for atmospheric pressure that would crush most solid beings. "That's why they might succeed where we failed." The chamber fell silent as holographic. Displays shifted to show images of Earth, its blue oceans, green continents, and the sprawling cities built by its dominant species, humans. "Our studies show these humans possess unique psychological traits," continued Kang, her translator converting her subsonic vibrations to standard speech. "They thrive on challenges. They run toward danger when logic dictates retreat. Their primitive brains lack the advanced fear responses our evolution has perfected." The oldest member of the Council, a crystalline being known only as the Ancient, shifted slightly, the equivalent of intense interest from a creature that moved perhaps once per decade. "You suggest we violate our own primary directive?" The Ancient's thoughts echoed directly into the minds of all present. "We have never interfered with developing species. Earth is centuries away from meeting our contact criteria." Ambassador Lee stepped forward. "The directive exists to protect developing worlds from us, but now they may be our only hope of protection. Our advanced minds and technology make us vulnerable to this threat. These humans, their very primitiveness might be their strength," he gestured, and the displays showed humans in various situations of crisis, rescuing others from burning buildings, diving into treacherous waters, venturing into storm-ravaged areas to find survivors. "They face what terrifies them," Lee continued. "They've evolved on a world filled with natural disasters, predators, and challenges. When faced with the unknown, they don't just flee, they investigate, they adapt, they overcome." The Council. Chamber filled with debate, voices rising as representatives argued the merits and dangers of direct contact with an unproven species. Hours passed before the Ancient raised a crystalline appendage, silencing all discussion. "We face extinction," the Ancient communicated. "Our civilizations may end. Our alternatives have been exhausted. Contact the humans." Within days, the Council's fastest ship crossed the vast distance to Sol system, carrying a delegation of the galaxy's most diplomatic species. They bypassed typical first contact protocols, sending signals directly to Earth's rudimentary monitoring stations. In a small observatory tucked away in mountain highlands, Dr. Kim was just finishing her overnight. shift when the computers began registering something impossible. The signal wasn't random noise or natural stellar phenomena. It showed clear patterns, mathematical sequences, recognizable universal constants, and something that could only be an invitation. As dawn broke over the mountains, Dr. Kim's hands trembled as she picked up the phone. First contact had arrived, not with conquest or observation as humans had often imagined, but with a desperate plea for help from creatures far more advanced than themselves. The galaxy's greatest civilizations faced something they couldn't overcome, and they believed humans, with their strange courage and primitive ways, might be their last hope. The universe as humanity knew it was about to change forever, not because they had reached out to the stars, but because the stars had reached out to them. Dr. Kim hadn't slept in 36 hours. How could she? The signal kept repeating, perfect mathematical sequences that couldn't possibly be natural. She'd called her department head, who called the government, who called other governments. Now her small observatory was packed with military personnel, scientists and officials speaking in hushed, urgent tones. Could it be a hoax? Asked a general, his uniform decorated with medals from conflicts Kim had only read about. No way, she answered, pointing to her computer screen. We're receiving it from multiple directions now. It's being relayed by objects in our solar system that weren't there yesterday. Outside the observatory windows, news helicopters circled despite the no-fly zone. Somehow word had leaked. Social media was exploding with theories, hope, and fear. The stock market had suspended trading after initial panic selling. "Dr. Kim," called out her assistant, "there's something happening." Everyone rushed to the windows. A light appeared in the morning sky, growing brighter than the sun but somehow not painful to look at. It descended slowly, a perfect sphere that seemed to ripple like water. "My God," whispered someone beside her. Military jets scrambled nearby, but kept their distance per orders from the highest levels. No one knew what to do. Humanity's countless books, movies, and scientific theories about first contact hadn't prepared them for the real thing. The sphere stopped its descent about a mile above a nearby field. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then a beam of light shot down from it, touching the ground and spreading into a perfect circle about 50 feet across. "They want to meet," said Dr. Kim, somehow certain. "How can you know that?" demanded the general. She pointed to her computer. "The signal changed. Look at the pattern. It's showing humanoid figures and this exact location." 2 hours later, after frantic calls between world leaders, a delegation was hastily assembled. Dr. Kim found herself included among representatives from major governments, military leaders, and scientific experts. They approached the circle of light cautiously, surrounded by security forces, whose weapons seemed laughably inadequate against beings who could travel between stars. "I'm terrified," whispered the physicist walking beside her, a man whose theories on space-time had earned him global recognition. "Me too," Kim admitted, "but also excited. I've dreamed about this moment since I was a kid watching the stars." The delegation stopped at the edge of the light circle. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the air in the center shimmered, and figures began to appear. Kim's scientific mind struggled to process what she was seeing. 3 beings stood before them, each completely different from the others. One was tall and slender, with blue skin that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. Another resembled something like a mantis, with an exoskeleton and multiple limbs that moved with surprising grace. The third hovered above the ground, a translucent being that seemed partly gaseous, changing shape subtly as it moved. "We greet you, humans of Earth," said the blue being, its mouth not moving but the words appearing directly in Kim's mind, and apparently everyone else's, based on their startled expressions. "I am Ambassador Lee of the Galactic Council. We come not as conquerors or explorers, but as petitioners." The world held its breath as cameras broadcasted the moment to billions of people watching across the planet. "Petitioners?" asked the UN Secretary-General, who had been unanimously selected as humanity's spokesperson. "I don't understand." "We need your help," said the mantis-like being, its voice also translated directly into their thoughts. "I am General Song. My people have fought threats across many star systems, but we now face something we cannot defeat alone. The floating, gaseous entity moved forward slightly. "I am Counselor Kang. We represent thousands of civilizations far, more technologically advanced than your own. Yet it is precisely your primitive nature that we require." Dr. Kim noticed how the aliens struggled with the word primitive, as if they were trying to be diplomatic. Over the next hour, the aliens explained the approaching anomaly. A cosmic horror consuming everything in its path, growing stronger with each advanced civilization it encountered. They showed holographic images that appeared in the air between them, worlds being consumed by darkness, advanced ships frozen in space as their crews became paralyzed with fear, entire solar systems vanishing. "Your species has something unique," explained Ambassador Lee. "Your minds are different. You lack the advanced fear responses our evolution has given us. You face danger rather than flee from it. These qualities may make you immune to the entity's primary weapon." "Let me get this straight," said the general who had been at the observatory. "You're saying that the most advanced species in the galaxy are too evolved to fight this thing, but we humans might succeed because we're, what? Too dumb to be properly scared?" The translucent alien, Counselor Kang, rippled in what might have been discomfort. "We would phrase it differently. Your neural patterns show remarkable adaptability in crisis. You produce unique neurochemicals under stress that our species lost millennia ago." One of the world leaders stepped forward. "Why should we help you? You've been watching us for centuries without making contact. Now you arrive only because you need something from us." Ambassador Lee's large eyes blinked slowly. "A fair question. We have observed but not interfered because that is our way with developing worlds. Had circumstances been different, we would have waited until your civilization matured further before making contact." The ambassador paused. "But the anomaly approaches your system next. If we fail to stop it, Earth will be consumed regardless. Together, we may have a chance." Dr. Kim listened as world leaders debated, questioned, and finally negotiated with beings from another world. It felt surreal, like she was watching a movie rather than living through a pivotal moment in human history. Yet something about the aliens' desperate plea resonated with her. They had crossed unimaginable distances not to conquer but to ask for help. As the sun began to set, agreements were reached. A call would go out for volunteers, people with specific skills and psychological profiles. Dr. Kim knew immediately she would sign up. How could she not? Humanity had always looked to the stars with wonder. Now the stars were looking back, not with indifference but with need. For the first time in recorded history, humans weren't alone in the universe. And somehow, against all odds, the fate of civilizations far more advanced than their own now rested in human hands. The call for volunteers went out worldwide, and the response was overwhelming. Within days, millions of applications flooded the hastily established First Contact Response Center. People from every country, every background, and every profession stepped forward. Grandmothers who had survived wars, teenagers who had never left their hometowns, doctors, soldiers, teachers, and truck drivers, all willing to risk everything to save not just humanity, but countless other species across the galaxy. Dr. Kim found herself on the selection committee, reviewing applications, alongside military strategists, psychologists, and the alien representatives. The criteria were unusual. They weren't necessarily looking for the strongest, the smartest, or the most qualified on paper. They needed people with specific psychological traits, those who ran toward danger rather than away from it, those whose fear triggered focus instead of paralysis. "What about this one?" Dawn asked Dr. Kim, pulling up the file of a deep-sea rescue diver. She spent her career diving into underwater caves that would terrify most humans. Ambassador Lee leaned forward, his blue skin shimmering under the fluorescent lights. "Interesting neural patterns. The fear centers in her brain activate differently than most of your species." "Add her to the list," said General Park, the military commander overseeing the human side of the operation. "We need people who have stared into the abyss and didn't blink." After 2 weeks of round-the-clock screening, they had their team. 12. Humans chosen from across the globe. A firefighter who had run into burning buildings to save strangers. A trauma surgeon who performed his best work when everyone else panicked. A deep-sea explorer who had discovered new species in the crushing darkness of ocean trenches. a bomb disposal expert whose hands never shook, a disaster zone first responder who had pulled survivors from the rubble of collapsed buildings. Each volunteer had faced death and fear repeatedly and moved toward it rather than away. Commander Park was chosen to lead the team. She wasn't the highest-ranking military officer who volunteered, but her psychological profile was exactly what the aliens were looking for. She had survived 3 weeks alone in hostile territory after a mission went wrong, keeping her cool, when others would have broken. The night before departure, families gathered at a secure facility to say their goodbyes. No one knew if the volunteers would ever return. "I'm proud of you," Dr. Kim told the team as she made her final rounds. "Whatever happens, you're making history." Commander Park smiled slightly. "We're not doing it for history, Doc. We're doing it because it needs doing." The next morning, the 12 humans boarded the alien vessel with minimal equipment. The aliens had explained that advanced technology would only strengthen the entity. Something about the quantum entanglement of sophisticated systems making them vulnerable to the anomaly's influence. Instead, the team carried simple tools: mechanical compasses, analog watches, hand-powered equipment, and basic weapons that required no electronic components. The alien ship itself was a wonder, a living vessel grown rather than built, with walls that pulsed like a giant heart. As the humans settled into their quarters, they met the multi-species crew that would take them to the edge of the anomaly. "Your lack of fear is disturbing," said a crystalline being whose body resembled polished quartz. "My species would be paralyzed with terror at the thought of what you're about to face." "Oh, we're terrified," replied Lieutenant Kim, a former search and rescue specialist. "We're just used to working through it." The aliens watched in fascination as the humans prepared in ways that seemed bizarre to more advanced species. They told jokes about their potential doom. They arm-wrestled and played cards. They shared stories of their families and favorite meals back on Earth. Some prayed according to their various faiths, while others sat quietly, writing letters to loved ones they might never see again. "I don't understand," Ambassador Lee said to Dr. Kim, who had come aboard to monitor the team's psychological state during the journey. "They know they might die, yet they seem almost happy." Dr. Kim watched as 2 team members taught an alien crew member how to play poker, all 3 of them laughing at the aliens' confusion about bluffing. "It's how we cope," she explained. "Humans bond under pressure. We find moments of joy even in darkness. It's always been our way." As the ship accelerated beyond anything humans had ever experienced, the team gathered in what the aliens called the observation dome, a transparent bubble that offered views of space that no human telescope had ever captured. Stars streaked by as the ship opened a corridor through dimensions that Earth science hadn't even theorized yet. "We're really doing this," whispered Technician Lee, the youngest member of the team at just 26. "We're the first humans to leave our solar system. And possibly the last," said Dr. Choi, the trauma surgeon, though his voice held wonder rather than fear. After 3 days of travel, though the aliens explained that time flowed differently at these speeds, they approached the edge of the anomaly. On the bridge, the human team gathered to see their enemy for the first time, not through recordings or holographic projections, but with their own eyes. The view screen showed what appeared to be a tear in the fabric of space, a swirling darkness that seemed to absorb light, matter, and hope itself. Around it floated the remains of what had once been a solar system, fragments of planets, chunks of asteroids, all slowly being pulled into the maw of nothingness. As they drew closer, the effects became immediately apparent. Alien crew members began to tremble, their movements becoming erratic. Several collapsed, overcome by terror so profound that their bodies simply shut down. The ship's living systems started to pulse irregularly, like a heart under extreme stress. Yet, the humans, while clearly afraid, remained functional. They felt the fear, a cold dread that settled in their stomachs, a primordial voice screaming to run, but their brains processed it differently. "Status report," Commander Park ordered, her voice steady despite the sweat beading on her forehead. "Ship systems failing," reported the alien navigator, its voice trembling. "We cannot maintain position for long." "Then we need to move now," said Commander Park, turning to her team. They nodded, faces serious but determined. "Suit up. We're going in." As the humans prepared for their mission, the aliens watched with a mixture of horror and hope. They had crossed the galaxy to find these primitive beings, betting everything on the possibility that what made humans less advanced might be exactly what would save them all. Now it was time to see if they were right. The pressure suits felt primitive compared to everything else on the alien ship. Made of materials the humans had never seen before, they were still essentially reinforced fabric with clear helmets, nothing like the advanced technology the aliens normally used. The entity consumed sophisticated systems, turning them against their users, so the team needed equipment as simple as possible. "Remember," Commander Park said as they gathered in the launch bay, "we stick together. Basic communication only, hand signals when possible, short-range radio only when necessary." The 12 humans checked each other's suits, falling back on training that suddenly seemed inadequate for what they faced. Through the launch bay windows, they could see what remained of a small moon, their landing site. Once part of a thriving solar system, it now orbited nothing but darkness. "The entity's influence is growing stronger," warned Ambassador Lee, who had insisted on accompanying them to the launch bay, despite the visible tremors now running through his slender blue form. "Our ship cannot remain here longer than 6 hours before systems will fail completely." Commander Park nodded. "We'll be back in 5, one way or another." The journey to the surface took only minutes in the shuttle pod, a simple craft that resembled an Earth rowboat, more than a spacecraft, powered by mechanical systems that the aliens hadn't used in millennia. As they descended, the humans got their first unfiltered view of the anomaly. It was beautiful in a terrible way. The darkness wasn't just absence of light. It moved, swirled, almost seemed to breathe. Around its edges, reality itself appeared to bend, stars distorting as if seen through rippling water. "It's like looking into an ocean trench," whispered Lieutenant Kim, the deep-sea explorer, the same feeling of something ancient waiting below. The shuttle landed with a jolt on the moon's grey surface. Dust rose and settled quickly in the low gravity. Through their helmet visors, the team could see the jagged landscape illuminated by a light that seemed wrong somehow, as if the normal rules of physics were beginning to fray. "Atmosphere reading," reported Technician Lee, checking a hand-powered gauge. "There's nothing breathable out there, but the suit integrity should hold." One by one, they descended the ladder to the surface. Each step kicked up dust that glittered strangely, falling back in patterns that seemed to form and reform like living things before settling. "Stay focused," Commander Park reminded them. "Whatever you see, whatever you feel, remember why we're here." They moved across the surface in formation, heading toward the anomaly that loomed on the horizon. With each step, the feeling of dread intensified. It wasn't just fear. It was a bone-deep certainty that they were walking toward something they were never meant to see, something that existed outside the rules of their universe. Halfway to their destination, Officer Choi stopped suddenly, pointing at his helmet. The others gathered around as he wiped at the condensation forming inside his visor. "Is he crying?" asked Technician Lee through the radio. "No," said Dr. Choi, the trauma surgeon. "Look at his eyes." Officer Choi's eyes were clear, focused. But inside his helmet, moisture was gathering, moving against gravity, forming patterns that resembled writing in no human language. "It's trying to communicate," Dr. Choi said, studying the patterns, "or it's trying to get in our heads." "Keep moving," Commander Park ordered. "Whatever's happening, we deal with it at the source." As they continued forward, the phenomena intensified. The ground beneath them began to shift subtly with each step, as if the moon's surface had become slightly elastic. The darkness ahead seemed to reach toward them with tendrils of shadow that evaporated in the strange half-light. "My scanner's going crazy," reported Technician Lee, holding up a simple mechanical device with a needle that spun wildly. "These readings don't make sense. It's like the fundamental forces are different here." Dr. Choi moved beside him, studying the readings. "Not different, just more fluid. Think about deep ocean pressures changing how materials behave." "We're getting close to the edge," warned Lieutenant Kim, pointing ahead where the moon's surface simply ended, giving way to the void. They stopped 20 meters from where solid ground transformed into nothingness. From this distance, they could see that the anomaly wasn't just darkness. Within it, shapes moved, structures formed and collapsed, lights flared and died. "It's not consuming," whispered Dr. Choi, revelation in his voice. "It's transforming." The alien crew had described the entity as a predator, devouring worlds. But standing at its edge, the humans saw something different. The matter wasn't disappearing. It was changing into something outside normal space-time, following new rules of physics that their minds couldn't quite grasp. "It reminds me of the bioluminescent creatures in the deepest ocean trenches," said Lieutenant Kim, stepping closer to the edge than the others dared. "They create light displays that paralyze their prey." "You think it's a trap?" asked Commander Park. "I think it's a defense mechanism," Lieutenant Kim replied. "Something designed to keep others away." Officer Han, the former firefighter, had been silent until now. "When I worked forest fires, sometimes the only way out was through." He pointed directly at the heart of the anomaly. "Look there. The movement is different, more purposeful, the sucks." Team peered into the darkness. At first, they saw nothing. Then, as their eyes adjusted, they began to make out a shape at the center of the swirling void, something solid and structured amid the chaos. "That's not natural," said Technician Lee. "That's a vessel," finished Commander Park. "Something's in there." The radio crackled as Ambassador Lee's voice came through, distorted but audible. "Our ship's sensors are failing. What have you found?" "Tell them we're going in," Commander Park said after a moment's hesitation. "In," repeated Technician Lee, fear finally breaking through his composure. "Into that?" Commander Park looked at each team member. "We came here to do what the aliens couldn't, face this thing. That's exactly what we're going to do." "The logic is sound," said Dr. Choi, though his voice trembled slightly. "If it's a defense mechanism, then moving toward it might be counterintuitive enough to work. Most creatures don't expect prey to approach a predator." "Link up," ordered Commander Park, extending her hands. "Physical contact only from here. If anyone feels like they're losing their grip on reality, squeeze twice." We pull back together if needed. They formed a human chain, each holding tightly to the next person's hand or arm. With Commander Park in the lead, they stepped to the very edge where solid matter gave way to the unknown. "For Earth," she said simply. Then she stepped forward, pulling the team with her into the darkness. The aliens, watching from orbit, witnessed what no other species had dared attempt. 12 tiny figures linked together, walking directly into the heart of the terror that had paralyzed the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. And as the humans vanished into the swirling void, the aliens felt something they hadn't experienced since first detecting the anomaly months ago. Hope. Stepping into the darkness felt like diving into ice water. The cold hit them first, not the physical cold of space, but something deeper that seemed to reach into their very souls. Then came the disorientation. Gravity shifted unpredictably. Light bent around them in impossible ways. Sound traveled differently, making their own breathing echo strangely in their helmets. "Stay together!" Commander Park's voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The human chain tightened, each person gripping their teammates harder, as reality itself became unreliable. They moved forward through what felt like thick liquid, each step requiring enormous effort. Around them, shapes formed and dissolved, things that resembled buildings, mountains, even living creatures, but twisted into geometries that human minds couldn't properly process. "Is everyone seeing this?" asked Officer Han, his voice tight with controlled fear. "If you mean the impossible shapes that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space, then yes," replied Dr. Choi. The surgeon's scientific mind was both his greatest asset and his greatest vulnerability here, trying to make sense of things that defied the laws of physics as humans understood them. Lieutenant Kim, used to the disorienting darkness of ocean depths, kept her focus on what was directly ahead. "There's something solid about 200 meters forward, the structure we saw from outside." As they pushed deeper into the anomaly, the fear that had paralyzed the aliens began to affect them too. It wasn't ordinary fear. It bypassed the thinking brain and spoke directly to the primitive hindbrain, triggering every survival instinct humans had evolved over millions of years. Run, hide, flee, die. The thoughts weren't their own, but they felt like they were. Several team members began breathing too quickly, heading toward panic. "Focus on your training," Commander Park ordered, her voice cutting through the mental fog. "Count your breaths. Name 5 things you can see." The simple psychological techniques worked, pulling them back from the edge of terror. Unlike the aliens whose advanced brains had evolved beyond such primitive coping mechanisms, humans still carried these mental tools forged in humanity's long history of facing danger and the unknown. After what felt like hours but might have been minutes, they reached the structure. Up close, it was clearly artificial, a vessel of some kind, though unlike anything human or alien engineers had designed. Its surface seemed to shift between solid and liquid states, metal flowing like water before reforming into complex patterns. "It's damaged," said Technician Lee, pointing to a section where the flowing patterns moved more erratically. "Look at the disruption in the field." As they studied the vessel, the space around them changed. The swirling darkness retreated slightly. The impossible shapes stabilized. It was as if whatever force controlled this place was watching them, curious about these creatures that had dared to enter its domain. "We're being scanned," said Officer Choi, pointing to where the patterns on the vessel's surface had aligned to face them. A pulse of energy shot out from the vessel, washing over the human team. Their suit systems flickered momentarily, then stabilized. The pulse wasn't an attack, it was a probe gathering information. "It's trying to communicate," said Commander Park. She stepped forward, placing her gloved hand against the vessel's surface. The reaction was immediate. The entire structure rippled like water disturbed by a stone. The darkness around them pulsed with light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Inside their helmets, they heard, or perhaps felt, a sound unlike anything on Earth. It wasn't language as humans understood it, but somehow they knew it carried meaning. "It's afraid," whispered Lieutenant Kim, somehow certain. "It's been trying to protect itself." Dr. Choi moved beside Commander Park, studying the vessel with new understanding. "It's not an entity, it's a traveler, a being from somewhere else. The anomaly is just a side effect of its presence in our reality." The pieces fell into place. This wasn't an invader consuming worlds. It was a wounded explorer, lost and frightened, creating the space-warping field around itself as protection, while it tried to repair its damaged vessel. The advanced technology of the alien civilizations must trigger its defenses, said Technician Lee. Their sophisticated ships, their evolved minds, they register as threats. "But we don't," added Officer Han. "We're too simple, too primitive. It doesn't see us as dangerous." Commander Park turned to her team. "We need to communicate that we want to help." She thought for a moment, then unclipped a simple mechanical tool from her belt, a basic wrench. She held it up, then pointed to the damaged section of the vessel, making a turning motion. The darkness pulsed again, a different frequency this time. The surface of the vessel rippled, then solidified into what looked almost like an airlock. "It understands," said Commander Park. "Technician Lee, you're with me. The rest of you maintain position." The two humans approached the newly formed entrance. As they reached it, the surface melted away, revealing an interior that human minds struggled to comprehend. Spaces that seemed to fold in on themselves, technology that appeared to exist in multiple states simultaneously. In the center stood, or perhaps floated, a being. Its form shifted constantly as if it couldn't settle on a shape that would make sense to human perception, but its intent was clear. It was the pilot, the traveler, and it was asking for help, working with tools designed for human hands rather than advanced technology. Commander Park and Technician Lee began assisting the being in repairs. They couldn't understand the principles behind the vessel's operation, but they could see where connections had been severed, where patterns had been disrupted. Using simple mechanical ingenuity rather than sophisticated knowledge, they helped restore functionality to systems beyond their comprehension. Hours passed as they worked. Outside, the rest of the team maintained their vigil, watching as the darkness around them gradually changed, becoming less threatening, more ordered. The fear effect that had paralyzed the aliens began. Finally, Commander Park and Technician Lee emerged from the vessel. Their suits were covered in a substance that seemed to shift between liquid and solid, glowing faintly with inner light. "It's done," Commander Park announced. "At least I think it is." The entire anomaly began to change. The darkness receded further. The impossible geometries simplified. The vessel at the center pulsed with new energy, systems coming back online. "We need to get out of here," urged Dr. Choi. "Whatever's happening, I don't think we want to be in the middle of it." They retreated the way they had come, moving faster, now as the resistance lessened. Behind them, the vessel began to glow with increasing intensity. The space around it folded in ways that made human eyes water trying to follow the movements. They reached the edge of the anomaly, just as a pulse of energy swept through it. For a brief moment, they saw the vessel clearly. Beautiful and impossible, designed for travel between realities rather than merely between stars. Then it was gone, taking the darkness with it and leaving only empty space where a solar system had once existed. On the alien ship, celebration erupted as sensors registered the anomaly's disappearance. Ambassador Lee rushed to the shuttle bay as the human team returned, his blue skin glowing with excitement and relief. "You succeeded where thousands of advanced civilizations failed," he said as they removed their helmets. "How? What did you find?" Commander Park exchanged glances with her team before answering. "Not what you expected. It wasn't a predator. It was a traveler, lost, damaged, and afraid." "A traveler," repeated Ambassador Lee, confusion evident in his large eyes. "From somewhere else," explained Dr. Choi. "Not just another part of space, but another reality with different rules. It created that field around itself as protection while trying to repair its vessel." "And you helped it?" Ambassador Lee seemed unable to comprehend the concept. "That's what humans do," said Officer Han simply. "When we see someone stranded on the side of the road, we stop to help." The Galactic Council had expected humans to defeat the threat through aggression or cunning. Instead, they had approached it with curiosity and compassion, seeing past their fear to recognize a fellow explorer in trouble. 3 weeks later, as Earth celebrated its new place in the galactic community, the Galactic Council convened in its grand chamber. This time a human stood among them, Commander Park, appointed as Earth's first ambassador. "We have misjudged humanity," said the ancient, the crystalline being who rarely spoke. "We saw their primitive nature as a weapon to be used against her threat. We failed to see it as a gift." Ambassador Lee nodded in agreement. "Their minds lack our advanced evolution, yet they possess something we have lost, the ability to face the unknown, not just with resilience, but with hope." The Council voted unanimously to establish a permanent human embassy. Earth would not wait centuries to join the galactic community as originally planned. Humanity had earned its place not through technological advancement, but through courage and compassion. As she stood before the assembled representatives of thousands of civilizations, Ambassador Park thought about the traveler they had helped, a being so different that human minds could barely perceive it, yet driven by the same fundamental needs that all explorers share: the desire to journey safely and find their way home. Perhaps that was humanity's true gift to the galaxy. Not fearlessness or primitive thinking, but the simple understanding that across all species, across all realities, some things remain the same. The need for connection, the power of compassion, the courage to reach out a hand, or whatever appendage one might have, to help a stranger in the darkness. A new era had begun, one where the oldest civilizations in the galaxy would learn from the youngest. And somewhere beyond the stars, perhaps even beyond reality itself, a traveler continued its journey, carrying with it the story of the strange beings who had faced their fears and offered help when countless others had fled in terror. That might be humanity's greatest legacy among the stars.